Hello, welcome to Aspen's Nutrition Nexus Live. Today's program is titled The Emerging Role of the Gut Microbiome in Immune Health. My name is Kelly Kinnair from Aspen, and today we are honored to be joined by Dr. Carina Venter. Carina is a professor of pediatrics in the section of allergy and immunology at the Children's Hospital of Colorado and the University of Colorado Denver School of Medicine, where she's conducting research in allergy prevention and working with children with food allergies. Dr. Venter is currently the chair of the European Academy of Allergy and Clinical Immunology Workgroup on Immunomodulation and Nutrition. Before we get started, I would like to thank Nutricia for their support of today's program. Today's session will conclude with a question and answer period. You may submit your questions at any time using the Q&A function at the bottom of the webinar player. And I would now like to welcome Dr. Carina Venter. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, Kelly, and thank you very much for having me here to really discuss a topic that I find fascinating and I deal with every day in either research or clinical practice because, in my heart of heart, I am an allergy specialist dietitian and I love working with families and children with food allergies.
Wonderful. Well, this is a topic that we are so excited to discuss as well. So I'll kick it off and we're going to go through a couple of different topics here. So my first question for you, Carina, is can you describe for our audience today what is occurring at the intestinal microbiota level during early life?
Yeah, and I wonder if you want to just perhaps bring up our slides as well, Kelly, because I can perhaps explain this better. When we talk about research or clinical practice of the gut microbiome, there's two important terms that we often talk about. And the one is gut microbial diversity, and the other one is gut dysbiosis. And so the gut microbiota is really very diverse, and it harbors trillions of microorganisms. And dysbiosis is when we say we don't have a balance. So I get to work a lot with Professor Liam O'Mahony, who's a gut microbial specialist and immunologist from the University College Cork. And I said to Liam one day, why do we want, to have the good and the bad bacteria in the gut? Why don't we just want to have just good bacteria in the gut? And he explained it to me very well, I think, at least using an analogy about a school playground. And he said, for a school playground to be healthy and balanced, we're going to have the kids that's perhaps a little bit more boring in our opinion. We're going to have the kids that's very sporty in our opinion. We may have some troublemakers, and we have some peacemakers. He said, but at the end of the day, when we look at the school ground, everybody's happy, even though they're so different. And so we don't just want to have troublemakers, but we also don't want to have just the sporty or perhaps the little bit boring kids. And so that really is the opposite of dysbiosis, because in dysbiosis, we will have an overgrowth of certain of the bacteria, when we have to want diverse gut microbiome where everything is sort of like in balance, that is like a playground with little bits of every kid. But, I think, what we're still trying to answer is it really just the diversity that's important in the gut microbiome, or is there a particular bacteria that's associated with particular diseases? So I will highlight bifidobacteria and lactobacillus a few times, and also Clostridia to some extent during the course of our discussions. That seem to be the three most important ones in terms of allergy outcomes, but we really are learning every day. And Blautia is another one about which of the particular gut microbial organisms are important for allergy prevention and management. And, the other question is, does a diverse microbiome necessarily always lead to positive health outcomes? Okay, so if we go to the next slide now. The other thing is that we know the gut microbiome changes a lot over the first 3 years of life, and so does the immune system. And so in clinical practice, 20 years ago, we would have made a diagnosis of food allergy and said that, this is your diagnosis, you're going to have milk and egg and peanut allergy for the rest of your life. But we now know that if we can actually get the children exposed to these allergens, whether we're trying to prevent or whether we're trying to introduce it into a child's diet that's already allergic to the food, that first few years of life is really the important thing. And this change in the immune system really fits exactly with the changes we see in the gut microbiome, because there's dramatic changes over the first 3 years of life. And so the developmental phase is month 3 to 14. That's really when the children start the transition of breast milk onto solid foods. We have a transitional phase, month 15 to 30, when they start getting more settled onto family food. And this is really why we as families should eat healthy, because if we eat unhealthy, we're going to transition this kid into an unhealthy gut microbiome. And then when we eventually get to the stable phase or the adult phase, from about 3 years of age, when we really don't see that much dramatic changes in a child's environment and food intake, and things seem to stabilize. So really getting in there before 3 years of age, when we want to change the child's diet or weight trajectories or disease trajectories is very important. So if we then go to the next slide. And so one of the questions is, people often ask me, but what about the maternal factors and the infant gut microbiome? Can what anything a mom does during pregnancy change what we see in the infant's gut microbiome? And so this is my own data, which I'm very excited about. So, I did talk to you about the diverse gut microbiome, and that we think that's beneficial for disease prevention, and particular allergic disease prevention. But in the first 3 months of life, we do not want a diverse gut microbiome. We want a non-diverse gut microbiome that's characterized mainly by bifidobacteria, as we see in infants that are breastfed. And so this is data that I published where we looked at maternal diet in pregnancy. And we did correct the analysis for mode of delivery, as well as whether the infants were breast or formula feed. And so what you can see with the green bars is the children that had the lowest diversity by 1 month of age, their mothers had the healthiest diet. And so this is exactly what we want. We want mothers with a healthy diet diversity, and we want low gut microbiome diversity at 1 month. But we only want low gut microbiome diversity if it's going to be characterized by the bifidobacteria. If we have low gut microbiome diversity characterized with E. coli, these babies are going to be very sick. And so the first graph shows you the low microbiome diversity, which is exactly what we want. And then the next graph actually shows that, thankfully, the children whose mothers had the healthy diet, so more vegetable intake and more yogurt intake, they actually also had the more bifidobacteria. And this is really, I think, fascinating information, showing that if we can get mothers to eat more vegetables and more fermented food, whether it's yogurt or perhaps kimchi, we can actually change the baby's gut microbiome beneficially, even if delivery didn't go as planned and the mother might have ended up with a C-section, or, perhaps breastfeeding didn't work out as planned, and the babies ended up on formula feeding. And so the next question is also focusing on factors then beyond pregnancy. What else can we do? And there's a lot of data looking at breastfeeding and whether it prevents allergy. Unfortunately, there's no data indicating that breastfeeding prevents food allergy. And I think, I can use this analogy again of comparing apples with pears, or comparing a fruit salad made from apples and bananas, which I think is a bit bland and boring, versus a fruit salad that's got lots of blueberries, blackberries, cherries, and different colored apple in it. And so when we look at breast milk composition, it changes a lot from feed to feed, and it's also very different between mothers. And so we know that in general, breast milk enhances the growth of bifidobacteria. It has a negative effect on some microbes like Clostridium, for example. Human milk contain lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, but it really will differ vastly between different mothers. It also contains human milk oligosaccharides, but some mothers actually do not secrete as much human milk oligosaccharides. Some people call it prebiotics. Other people get very upset when you refer to human milk oligosaccharides as prebiotics. But again, just to say that these, human milk oligosaccharide secretions differ between mothers. And then it is therefore important to understand that when we look at whether breastfeeding or breast milk prevents a particular disease, such as allergy, we really need to look at the breast milk composition when we want to understand the link between the feed and actually allergy outcomes. So yes, there's huge potential for breast milk to prevent many diseases, including allergies, but we really need to understand much more about the actual composition of each of the different things in this immunomodulatory soup to understand how breastfeeding will affect the infant's gut microbiome and then eventually disease outcomes. And so I know we've been talking a lot, but let's go on to the next slide. And because I'll start to wrap up. And then finally, this is my particular interest. I'm not going to go through every slide in too much detail, but this is data from a cohort in Cork in Ireland. Again, research that I've done with Liam O'Mahony. And so the next few slides, I'm going to give you just a snapshot of how infant diet can actually affect the gut microbiome outcomes. So these children were born during the COVID pandemic, and they weren't exposed to dogs and cats and other people's, animals. And also, they didn't see much of the family other than their own siblings and their parents. And so we could really study in detail how diet affects the infant gut microbiome. And no surprise, if you look at the green bars, breastfeeding did have most of the effect on the infant gut microbiome, but following from that was the plant-based foods. So soy and seeds and nuts particularly had the beneficial effect on the infant gut microbiome alongside beans. And then you may be surprised about ghee beneficially affecting the gut microbiome, but ghee is loaded with butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid, which we need for a healthy gut. So no surprise. So if we go to the next slide then, that brings me right to butyrate. So in this study from Sweden, actually Switzerland, they looked at a diverse diet in pregnancy, and just like the ghee, the diverse diet in infancy, I correct myself, the children had more butyrate when they had a more diverse diet. When we make more butyrate, we have more T regulatory cells, which say, please calm down. Everybody needs to get on well, and we want less allergic diseases. And so they found also that these kids with more butyrate in their gut in the first year of life had less allergic diseases up to 6 years of age. If we go to the next slide then, so then people wondered, is it just a diverse diet in pregnancy, in infancy that's important? Or what about allergen diversity? And this is beautiful data from the EAT study looking at allergen diversity in the first year of life. And as the children were eating more food allergens, their gut microbiome diversity increased, and they also produced more firmicutes, of which Lactobacillus GG is one of the bacteria. And again, that's a butyrate producer. So a diverse diet in infancy, as alongside a diverse allergen intake in infancy, can really beneficially change the gut microbiome. And if we then go to the next slide, so the majority of food allergens are plant-based foods other than milk and egg. And the American Gut Study showed that 30 types of plant-based foods a week is most beneficial for the gut microbiome. So when we talk to infants about, and families about a healthy gut microbiome in the first year of life, there's no need to wait 3 to 4 days between each new food. We really want to make the diet as diverse as possible to get this diverse gut microbiome to increase the bacteria that's going to eventually produce butyrate. And then I think if we go to the next slide now, so why does this all matter in terms of cow's milk allergy? I gave you now an overview of the gut microbiome, pregnancy factors, breastfeeding factors, infant diet factors. that can all beneficially change the gut microbiome. And the reason we want to do this in the allergy world is really because cow's milk allergy is the most prevalent and the most complex form of food allergy we encounter in our food allergy clinics. And when we look at the gut microbiome of children with cow's milk allergy, I don't want to go into too much detail on this slide, with the bottom line is saying it differs a lot from children without cow's milk allergy. And if we then go to the next slide, we also see this when we just look at whether children are sensitized to allergens. If you just look at the colors of the bars without going into detail about each allergen, there's clear differences between children that's sensitized and likely to become food allergic and children with no food allergen sensitization. If we go to the next slide, I love this slide. It's just beautiful pictures. Again, let's not get into the detail, but picture A and picture B. Picture A is children with food allergy. Picture B, children without food allergy. The inner circle is at the time of diagnosis, and the outer circle is 6 months later. And it doesn't matter how you look at it and how you count your bacteria. You can see the inner circle of A and B very different, and 6 months later, the outer circle of A and B is still very different. So the gut microbiome of children with and without cow's milk allergy differs a lot from children who will not go on to develop cow's milk allergy. And if we then go to the next slide, even if we look at the children that's going to outgrow their cow's milk allergy, which is the blue line, versus children who do not outgrow their cow's milk allergy, then you can actually see that the blue line who outgrows their allergy versus the children who remain cow's milk allergic also have differences in their gut microbiome. So for prevention and management of cow's milk allergy, looking at the gut microbiome and nurturing a healthy microbiome is hugely important. And I think this is where I conclude now with my slides. If we go to the next one, and we can move over to Dr. Juan. And I don't think we need to talk more about the short-chain fatty acids because I've talked about that in detail. So we can go on to the next one for Dr. Juan.
Great. And thank you, Dr. Juan, for joining us today. So we are also joined today by Dr. Qian Yuan. I'll give you a brief introduction, and then we can kind of go into more of our discussion here in a minute. So Dr. Juan is the Demarest Lloyd Jr. Endowed Chair in Food Allergies and co-director and principal investigator in the Food Allergy Center at Massachusetts Hospital. Associate professor in pediatrics at Harvard Medical School, senior pediatrician in the Department of Pediatric Gastroenterology and Nutrition at Mass General Hospital, and associate chief in the Department of Pediatric Gastroenterology and Nutrition at Newton Wellesley Hospital. So thank you also for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the introduction. And then this is just a great pleasure to join this platform for the podcast hosted by Aspen, hosted by Kelly. And it's a great pleasure to always join my dear colleague and friends, Dr. Venter here, who has beautifully illustrated the importance of the gut microbiome in the food allergy. I think there's a few specific aspects which I'm going to fill in for the next few minutes.
Great. So I think at this point, we've talked a lot about what's happening at the level, right, of the gut microbiota. We've talked about differences between, healthy infants and those with food allergies, those who are breastfed and those who are not. So kind of sticking with the same food allergy topic, what are food allergy and gut dysbiosis topics? So I'd love for you guys to get into a little bit more about what are some of the long-term consequences of, and also, in general, what do we see as the overall clinical burden of cow's milk allergy?
Okay, that's great questions. Could I have that slide you just put up? All right. So as Dr. Venter just mentioned earlier, there is a unique path for the infant to gain a healthy microbiome from birth to about 1 year of age. So that sequence has been proven to be fundamental in terms of setting up the right immunological milieu for the babies to tolerize food, i.e. develop oral tolerance, prevent food allergy. And also there's a impact for the other immunological aspect for our system. Some of the, this has been a body of literature demonstrate the disruption of that process, which called the dysbiosis, refers to the imbalance of the bacteria, has a lead to a long-term consequences. Just to name a few, right? From the allergic perspective, there's a literature has demonstrated this early onset of dysbiosis in infancy can lead to allergic conditions that include asthma, seasonal allergic rhinitis, eczema, and even food allergies. And then for the inflammatory processes has been well studied in the inflammatory bowel disease, in particularly in early onset children with inflammatory bowel disease, particularly Crohn's disease, also colitis, ulcerative colitis. That has been associated with gut dysbiosis early in life. Now, metabolic disease like type 1 diabetes, obesity, and liver disease has also been associated as a consequence of this dysbiosis in infancy. Last but not least, there is a gut immune connections, the immunological or psychiatric conditions, such as anxiety, depression, ADHD, executive function, has all been associated with this early life dysbiosis. In a nutshell, this simulate this natural process in early infancy for the infant acquire normal microbiota in the gut. If that's been disrupted, they can have a long-term impact in all the different systems. So that's really an important aspect for us to discuss and to prevent. Next slide, please. I think this is talk about the overall burden of cow's milk allergy. And then Dr. Venter has mentioned that there are two types of cow's milk protein allergy. One is non-IgE mediated cow's milk protein allergy, which happened very early in childhood. This is what we've been studying for the past decade or so. That typically refer to food protein-induced allergic colitis that usually happen between 2 weeks to 2 months with a peak of 1 month. That's not IgE-mediated conditions. And then later on, there's the IgE-mediated cow's milk allergy that require epinephrine treatment with allergic reactions. So there are two types of different reactions to cow's milk allergy. So the overall disease burden is high in terms of early onset and then later develop. And now it's interesting to look at the non-IgE condition early childhood, early infancy, I should say. And we have shown that condition has increased the likelihood for those children to develop by IgE milk protein allergy by 50%. Other food allergies such as peanuts or egg by 2.5%. So seems to be the association between the early onset non-IgE mediated food allergy, cow's milk allergy, to later on develop cow's milk allergy, IgE mediated, and other IgE mediated conditions. In addition, we have also have some very preliminary data to show that also increase the likelihood to develop asthma by age of 10. And then that we already published increased the likelihood to develop eosinophilic esophagitis by age 5. So you can see now this interaction between the non-IgE mediated food allergy in infancy and later on other allergic conditions. Now, what our focus has been on, what's the reason, what's the cause for those infants that develop a non-IgE mediated allergy in early infancy. Our data has published, and that dysbiosis plays a major role. That's exactly the topic for what we're discussing today. So we have shown the infant that developed this allergic colitis in infancy, in early childhood. They show the distinct pattern of the gut microbiome versus the child who do not have, or the children do not have these conditions. And then typically we identified in the published study, I just try to summarize, we found that there's a hugely elevated enterobacteriaceae in children who develop allergic colitis. And then they have a much lower bifidobacterium. And then this has happened before the onset of clinical symptoms. You talk about if we think disease onset at 1 month, and then those changes already happened before that in the first few days, perhaps even earlier. So that early changes had led to the onset of the symptoms, and then when the disease resolved, and then we see the pattern shifted. And then we also see a rise of lactobacillus in those babies. So that's I give you a very short version for this dysbiosis we noticed in this early onset cow's milk allergy, non-IgE mediated. And then the dysbiosis, the big question is, what's the cause for those dysbiosis? How can we correct that? What's the prevention? Next slide, please. Now, the people have heard of prebiotics, probiotics, and symbiotic, right? Prebiotics essentially is the food product. It's a non-digestible plant fibers that serve as a nutrition for beneficial microbe in the gut. And that's already living in the digestive system to make it we have a healthy gut microbiome. When those microbes consume those prebiotics, and then they produce just Dr. Venter just mentioned earlier, shorter chain fatty acid, which is a potent anti-inflammatory substrate in our gut, and then which is crucial for maintaining good health. And then probiotics also provide a field to help. Sorry. Can you go back? Okay, help gut microbiome to thrive. And I give some examples down the bottom. Now, next slide, please. Now, people familiar with probiotics, these live organisms. They come with a different strain, can be yeast or bacteria, and they naturally exist in breast milk. And then we sometimes deliberately to introduce that in our gut with the hope to change correct the dysbiosis, and then promote healthy gut microbiome. Next slide, please. And then Synbiotics is a mixture of both pre and probiotics. There are two types of symbiotic. One is called a complementary symbiotic, which basically a combination of pre and probiotics that works independently, and then for the health of a benefit for our host. And then the other is called synergistic symbiotic. Basically, those pre and probiotics interact with each other, have an additive effect. There are two different strategies to prepare those symbiotic for our human use. Next slide, please. Now, in a cow's milk milk protein allergy, perhaps the best studied the effect of the symbiotic is the amino acid formula added is this B brevi M16V study. That's a nutrition did that study, and then that shows demonstrated improved gut microbiome, and then with the non-IgE mediated food allergy. We'll talk about early. And then they have a symptomatic resolution, and then improve the quality of life. And then they actually came regulate the gut. I have data to show you later on to regulate the microbiome, correct the dysbiosis. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the part of study. They put probiotics, prebiotics. The two different ratios in the 9:1 ratio, the two different natural ingredient, and also they add a probiotic which is B Brovi M16V, and then that's in the study, and then they mix that with the hypoallergenic formula, and then give that to children with cow's milk protein allergy. Next slide, please. These are busy slides. I won't go into what I'm trying to show is they on the left panel and on the bottom, and then they show the bee infantile species in the gut colonized nicely, which shows in this right bars. And then reciprocally, and you see the decrease of the bad bacteria. Basically, they're correcting the dysbiosis, which shows on the right bottom. And you see the decrease of the bad bacteria, increase the good bacteria, correcting the dysbiosis. Next slide, please. What even more interesting is beyond what happened in the gut, at the microbiome level, at the symptom level for the cow's milk allergy, also the study had demonstrated this symbiotic supplement in the formula can improve the overall health by demonstrating here they have overall less infection, less ear infection, less febrile illnesses. Just show you what happened in the gut, not just the impact in the gut health. They also impact the overall health immune system. Next slide, please. I won't go into too much detail. There's many different combinations, and people have studied in the space using a combination, different prebiotic combination. What do they use? A different symbiotic, I should say. What the prebiotics, what the probiotics, what the different ratios. There's the health effect. If you're interested, there's all the literatures listed here. Next slide, please. And then there's the multiple studies that demonstrate this combination of a blend of amino acid formula with symbiotic blend and impact outcome, which I just listed, I just demonstrated earlier. So I won't go into much details here. Let's just summarize. Next slide, please. And then go back to how we feed the child, how we feed our children, how do we promote gut biome health, as Dr. Venter mentioned earlier, and then deeper understanding of the process, deep understanding the consequences, and then will help us to design a better better food to feed our children, and then to promote gut health, and then reduce food allergy and the overall health state of life. Next slide, please. That's the last one. Okay, and then there's some. I just wanted to I don't want to sugarcoat or glamorize this. We understand we make a lot of progress, but there's a lot of other things from when you read. There's a lot of other limitations in this, because as we understand more, of course, we'll design better ways to manage, to promote better health. But and then a study has shown that there's some strain specific effect. What do you put in, how much you put in, which they may affect the different outcome with different disease outcome. Some is geared towards studying the eczema on the skin, some studied in the gut, some studied in the airway. So just bear in mind, different formulary, there's so far it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And then also there's inconclusive effect on some of the clinical symptoms in early onset in the early study on cow's milk protein allergy. So this is how to some shows that there has a beneficial effect, reduce the fussiness, reduce vomiting. Some shows a little effect. So they may have something to do with the study design, with the product they used. And certainly they cause for a need for further research in this space by exploring different combinations in a larger randomized controlled trials, and then to better understanding the dosage, the formulation, and then the duration of supplement in order to treating for the cow's milk allergy when they're occurring, and also more importantly to prevent development of other food allergy, to prevent progress of the allergic march. Next slide, please. I think that's the last one. And we're open for discussion. Oh, this is already mentioned that. Thank you.
Please. Yes, thank you both so much for this amazing information, very detailed and so much good data that you just shared with us. We had tremendous participation today. I know we've gone over time a little bit, but we do still have a number of people on the call. I thought maybe we could take a question or two, just take another couple of minutes just to make sure we answer some of the questions. So Carina, I'm going to start with you. There is a question that's directed to you about something you mentioned. So you mentioned that it's typical to introduce a new food every 3 days, that the recommendation to introduce a new food every 3 days is not ideal to encourage a diverse microbiome. So what is it? The question is it better to offer a few together, fruits, vegetables, grains during infancy? Like, I guess, what would your recommendation be?
Yeah, so I do want to say that I know that the waiting for every food 3 to 4 days comes from the AAP, but the AAP also in their book, Caring for the Young Child, said that in the past we used to believe we need to wait 3 to 4 days between each new food, but the latest research indicate that multiple foods can be introduced at once. And so I guess you have the okay to mix the banana with the, I don't know, avocado and the rice if you like. But I think for me in clinical practice, what makes sense is I will do one new food a day. If it's a really low risk food, you know, like, I don't know, apple and peach, I may do apple breakfast, peach at lunchtime. I tend to be a little bit more cautious with the allergens. I will do egg perhaps on a Monday, wait Tuesday, and then Wednesday I'll do peanut. So sort of like give a day between each new allergen. But interestingly, aside from allergy, data from Vevey in Switzerland actually showed that babies who was fed mixtures of foods rather than single foods at a time had lost late feeding dysfunction by the age of 2. So I think, you know, for the gut microbiome and for future feeding, don't be scared of food. Let the babies eat. And also work with the mom. I have moms that just mix food, you know, irrespective of what I say. And other moms, I get to do one new food every day, but not 2 new foods a day. So work with the family, but don't be scared of food.
I think at this point, just because we are over a bit on time, we are going to wrap up. There's a lot of questions about references and the handout, so we will make sure that everybody gets this really great information that you've presented to us. So this will conclude our session at this point. Thank you all who are still with us for participating in today's Nutrition Nexus Live program. Thank you again to our wonderful speakers, Dr. Qian Yuan and Dr. Carina Venter. And a special thank you to Nutricia for supporting this program. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.